Okay. Um, so hopefully we're live. Yeah, so today I'm doing gonna be talking about this game Screeps, which I found online. I was interested in a while ago, but have been meaning to check it out. And I went through like an hour and a half or something of the tutorial this weekend, and it felt um, like it would be something cool to share with the coding space community. Um, so I want to do that. I want to good. Pay no attention to this. Okay, good. I The way of streaming this is slightly different than what I'm usually used to, so it'll be slightly rough. And if I play more of this on stream, I will figure out a better way to do this. But so I already did the tutorial, and I think what I want to do is basically just walk through what we learned in the tutorial in the training mode. And yeah. Um, oh, this is literally the same room that the tutorial was in. Cool. Um, but yeah, okay. So let me just give a brief description before we get into this. So this is Screeps. This is a game. The people that made it bill it or market it as a MMO RTS for programmers. So let's break down all of those letters. So MMO is massively multiplayer online. So what this means is that if you're playing it normally and not in training mode, that means you're playing against other people. So there's other people controlling stuff. The RTS is real-time strategy. So that means that you're doing things at the same time that other people are doing things, and um, things will like clash into each other, and you try to be victorious in whatever way that means for you. And then a game for programmers means that we're going to actually be programming to play this game, which like I'm super psyched about. There's a whole bunch of really cool concepts that this game can talk about that I hope to be able to dive into with you guys today and in future weeks. But the general idea of like, so that's the genre stuff that we're in. What I want to do now is say what sort or like so the actual gameplay of this is that we're going to be creating these little robot things that are called Screeps, um, and we're going to write the code that tells them what to do. So we're going to say like every time you take a step, which in this game we call ticks, which is like this tick thing up here. Um, Basically, there's going to be a tick, which is every single Screep will, or every single, I guess maybe not everyone, but you can send commands to as many of the things that you control as you so desire, and then on each tick, all of them will do that thing that you told them. And the idea is that you are going to write code that not just say, hey, go mine this mineral, but say, I want you to keep on making trips to go mine this mineral and come back and drop it off at the place where we can store it, and just keep on doing that until I tell you to do something else. And yeah, we're just going to be going about doing that. And so to start off with, we're going to be placing a spawn. So I'm going to click there. We're going to call it spawn one. And that's going to be great. Cool. Well, that's fun. Oh, because in main we don't have anything here. I'm actually going to, okay, you can do that spawn thing. I am actually going to steal a slight amount of code thing. So I'm actually just going to go to the official documentation, look at the tutorial. This tutorial have the whole thing. I'm just going to look at these scripts on GitHub. Yeah, so I'm just going to do the super basic thing. So I just want this this bit. So I'm going to copy that and dump it in here. So this is in my main method. I'm going to do this. And this is still happening every second. Oh, because I need to check it in. So if I hit Control Enter is like saying this is what my script actually is. So what this error was saying was main doesn't have anything in it. So when we try to tell main to do things, it doesn't do them, and that's not okay. A lot of the errors that you can encounter are very programmer-y errors, if that makes any sense. In that they look like this. They look pretty dense. Um, and so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be in the console, and so this spawn is a thing that like lets us make new Screeps, make new robot things that we're gonna control. Um, so let's see, I need to remember how to do that. So I think we say game dot spawns, and then we tell it which spawn we want to talk about, which is spawn 1, and then we say dot create creep. Does that do anything? If I do this, or no, it's probably spawn creep. Yeah, spawn creep. This is a function, and then we want to give it. Does it tell us what it wants? Spawn creep. Okay, yeah, because this here, which if I want to read some of this documentation, yeah. So yeah, so this tells us to spawn a creep, and I'm just going to be doing this once for now. And so the first thing is yeah, so the arguments, the first one is a body saying what things it wants. So from the tutorial, I know that it wants a work, a carry, and a move, because you need a move to be able to move at all. You need a carry to be able to carry stuff, and you need a work to be able to pick up energy and move it somewhere else. Then we need a name, and then we're not going to worry about this thing because it's optional. And yeah, so we're going to say spawn creep, and we're going to say work, carry, move, and we're going to call it harvester 1. Harvester 1. And so this 0 here is saying, okay, I did that. There weren't any errors with it. Job's a good one. So now there's this little doodad here where we say the owner is me, and the name is harvester 1. So now if we want to do things, we can do game.creeps. Yeah, game.creeps of harvester 1. We can tell it to move to right, what does move to take? We can tell it to just move one direction, so we can tell it move right. And it moves right. Hooray. If I tell it to do it again, it moves right again. Hooray again. So that is the super basic way of doing it. There is a built-in pathfinding algorithm, which I suspect they made bad, so you can improve it and like have the ability to improve it. But yeah, so but the main thing, yeah. So this is find the optimal path to a target within the same room and move to it. So this is saying like we're currently at 2824. We want to get here, so we want to get to 3420 or something like that. Um, and I think the cool thing about this is once you do it once, like the first time you tell it to move, it computes what path it's planning on taking, and when you call it again, it just says, okay, I'm gonna follow that path that I figured out before. Um, I believe. Again, I've played this game for an hour and a half, so I don't truly know all the things that I'm saying are true. But we're trying to go to 3520, so we tell it that, and it says, okay, it takes one step in that direction, and then if I say do it again, it does it again. So we could play the game like this, but this seems extremely tedious of telling each single robot every step that we want it to take. Um, and so when we're in the console, we can tell it like what we want it to do for the next tick. But what we want to do is go into the script and tell it what to do for every script going forward, um, or for every tick going forward, what we want it to do. So in here, we're going to say, um, here this like loop thing is saying we're going to do this every time, on every tick, we're going to run this code. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy, I'll try to copy. I'm going to copy this guy into here. And so now, if I do this and check it in, so I just hit Control Enter. Did I? Yeah. So now, on every tick, this thing is going to move. Where now it's as close as it can get to there, and it is happy. So then the next thing we want to do is tell it to actually harvest this thing. Because we can see it currently is carrying nothing, and so we want to tell it to pick up stuff. So we can say, we're going to say game.creeps or harvester1 harvest. Okay, so this says from this source, the target has to be in an adjacent square. Okay, so we need to figure out what the object ID of this thing is. So we say .harvest, and then in here we'll need to figure out how to figure out what this is. So I think we're going to do game.room, oh wait, no. What we're going to do is say this room that this creep is currently in. So we're going to say this guy dot room, and then we can ask things of it. We can say, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's inside here. We want to get sources. No, we want to, oh no, there's an intruder. I'm certainly ditzing around at the moment. Okay, I think I would rather look up this in the documentation as opposed to try to figure it out based on that. So we're going to go back to this documentation and make sure that everything's okay. Oh dear, I'm going to turn down my brightness a little bit so I'm not completely glowing. I'm just going to look at what they have the harvester do. So, okay, creep.room.find and then find sources is kind of what we want to do. In here, so we .room.find and then find sources. Right, I think I need semicolons on these guys. This thing is not a valid command yet because it doesn't have anything inside the harvest, and then we're going to say our sources Um, and we're just going to say let's just go to the first source for now, where later on we might want to like have more intelligent ways of figuring out what things are. Actually, I think what I want to do first is figure out or ask the console what this thing actually does. Okay, so this is for sources, and then we can say let's ask about the first one of these, which gives me that thing. Then you can do dot position. Is that legal? Yeah. So this is saying it's at this position. So yeah, so we can do that. And then the source that we want to deal with is um, sources 0. So I think if I check this in, this guy starts harvesting from this source, right? Yeah, because we see that he's starting to carry some energy. Um, so that's kind of cool. But eventually he's going to be full. So what we want to do is say, actually up here, we're going to say if this guy is not full. So if game.creeps of harvester1 dot store dot carry capacity store dot get yeah, so if get capacity is less than get get capacity is going to be like the 50 that it's able to carry, and the get free capacity is 0 when it's full and less than. Oh wait, no, we can just say get free. Let's make sure I'm using the right thing. Get free capacity. If this is less, no, if this is equal to 0, yeah. So if it has, or no, this is less than 0. This is greater than 0. Great. I'm doing great, guys. Can't you tell? So if it has free capacity, we want it to find a source, go to it, and harvest it. So what we're going to do is instead of move to this coordinate, we can say move to sources of 0. So this is saying go to there and then harvest from there. The issue that this will have is that you can only give a creep one command every tick. Like a creep can either be moving or harvesting, but it can't be doing both on the same tick, I'm like quite sure. And so wait, let me check what its free capacity is currently. It's currently oh, it might just be dropping stuff on the floor, which is kind of funny. But so currently it shouldn't have free capacity. So if I game.creeps of harvester1 dot store dot get free capacity, this should be 0. Yes, it is. Good. So this is greater than 0. We want to do this. Maybe I just didn't check this in. That's probably true. Yeah, so now this thing isn't actually doing anything. How much? Okay, there's a bunch of energy on the floor, but it's decaying. Sure. So what we want to do now is tell the creep to go back to tell the creep when it's full to go back and drop it off at the spawn. So that is going to be over here. We're going to say else we want to do this stuff, where let's just do this, and we can look and see at how if there's any issues with it before we try to make it better. So we want to ask, or let's just tell it to go back to spawn one because we know it's here. Where we might need to make this a little better in the future, but we say we're going to do this line 7 thing, but instead of sources, we're going to tell it to go back to the spawns. This is game.spawns of spawn 1. And then after that, we're going to tell this thing to transfer creep to power spawn. So the target needs to be an adjacent square. The target so the target is going to be the spawn, and then the resource type is going to be the thing. Okay, and we can specify an amount, but I just want all of it to be transferred, so we're just going to leave it at that and not worry about it. So yeah, so it's target object, which is spawn, and then resource energy. Game.spawns of spawn 1, and then resource energy. And we're going to check this in, which means that he's now going to go back to there. And do I see stuff in the console? I don't. Okay. So I suppose that seems to work. Oh, right, yeah, because this thing is already full. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spawn another harvester and just call it harvester 2. Hooray. And so now this guy drops off all his energy there and goes back to here in a somewhat odd path. Though I guess it's probably just as efficient, because I think doing diagonal movement is just as efficient as doing, or costs just as much as doing side-to-side movement. So we got that. So in this script, we have committed our first, or we have our first problem, where I've made a second harvester, where I'm calling this harvester 2, but it doesn't, like, we've said all this stuff is for harvester 1. So the first thing we're going to do is just put this in a for loop, where we're going to say all of our creeps are going to execute this logic. So we say for name in game.creeps, that's there, and then this curly bracket is going all the way down here, and all this stuff wants to get indented, including that. And so now, like, name the first time will be harvester 1, harvester 2. And actually, I guess I can just do this of console.log name. Yeah. So I'm going to check this in, and now when we look at the console, on every tick, we see that we're having the names console 1, console 2, or harvester 1, harvester 2. So I'm going to get rid of that. And so basically, we can do all these lookups, but in fact, these, like, looking this stuff up here of figuring out which creep we're talking about takes a little bit of time and just, like, is kind of ugly. So I'm just gonna, we can just shorthand it at the beginning. So we say var creep or screep equals game dot screeps of name. Um, so this looks up the creep that we're talking about at the moment, and then every time we use this thing, we're going to just say screep. Um, so here the same screep. And, we're doing riveting, copying, and pasting at the moment. Okay, so now I'm going to check this in, and now this should make it so both of the things do the work, and it seems like it's not, so that's not great. Did I truly check this in? I did. Oh, we have errors happening. That's fun. What errors are we having happen? Need property harvester 1 of undefined. Oh, is it creeps and not screeps? Yeah. Well, that's an error that I can make. Okay. Yeah. So now both of these are moving. This guy is staying here because he can't dump his load into the spawn because it's full. So I'm going to spawn another guy and name him Harvester 3. And now the spawn is pumping out that harvester, or that new creep, and these guys are all working, and so this is all good. But the issue with my script currently is that it always, um, like, it gives us the same behavior for every single screep, or creep, or whatever we want to call it. What's the actual name that it does it? Because I want to call them screeps, but it calls them creeps. Okay. I have issues with that naming convention, but that is not my battle to fight. Okay. Um, okay, that's still forever. Um, so, um, yeah, I guess what's the next thing? I want to, yeah, I guess it's probably better to say we want to figure out what the behavior of the next creep that we want is before moving it. No, because then I'll just need to have a huge if statement in here, and that'll just get to be annoying. Actually, no, that's actually fine. Um, so, so what we're going to do is we're going to have each creep um, each creep has a name. We also want to give it a role, which is something that you give it in its own internal memory, which is a little bit funky. Um, so I think the way that this works is we're going to, we're not going to use this line at all. We're going to say game dot creeps of harvester 1. We're going to say its memory dot role is going to be equal to harvester. And I'm going to do this for all three of the harvesters that I've made so far. And this is actually something that you can specify when you make them, but for now I'm just leaving it like this. And so I'm going to spawn a new creep. Yeah. I'm going to spawn a new creep. I'm going to call this guy Upgrader1. Because this thing up here is a room controller, and you need to control it to be able to do things in the room. I think is what's I think is how the game mechanic works. I only tentatively know how the mechanic of that bit works. But so um, we want to upgrade this thing to allow us to build fancier and fancier things in the room. So what that means is that I need to take stuff from the energy source and move it to the um, room controller. Yeah, I need to do room controlling things. Um, but so then I'm also going to say role is harvester. Or, no, sorry, role is upgrader. I think this is the syntax that I need for this, but I am only kind of sure of that. So I'm going to spawn this guy where it says it's fine. Also, this should hopefully make these guys go back to work. Yeah. Um, cool. And this spawn is working, popping something out. Okay, and this is upgrader. Does it have memory? I'm going to view memory. It has an object with stuff in it. Oh, no, no, no. Upgrader role. Okay. Um, let's make sure that we can. Oh, wait, no. We go back to this stuff. So I want to make sure that this thing is actually correct. So we want to say game.creeps of upgrader1. Upgrader1 dot memory dot roll. And let's just see what that. Oops. Roll. And it is an upgrader. So this is the correct syntax to make something an upgrader, which is cool. So that means I need to change my script. So I'm actually now going to give myself more space to work with this because I need it. So we're going to, for each creep, we're going to look up what this creep actually is. But then in here we're saying if screep.memory.roll equals harvester, then we want to do all this stuff that we told it to do. But if it's not, have all that stuff gets indented. Let me say else if screep.memory.roll equals upgrader, then we want to do different stuff, where it's going to be fairly similar in that we're going to say, we're going to say we basically want to go back and forth between the energy source and the room controller, and take energy from the source and dump it into the room controller. So we'll do similar things, where I'm just going to copy and paste all of this stuff for now. So if there's still free space, we want to go harvest. So all of this logic, I think, makes sense to keep because it's still saying if there's room, we want to go to this place, harvest it, and then take it back here. But if we can't, instead of moving to spawn 1, we need to move to the room controller. Or I'm going to figure out how to do that in the console, because I think I can make sense of this. So this is, or so we can say we're in the upgrader, and I think we can say room.controller. And this just gives us a thing, and we can say like dot pause, just like tells us where it is. Yeah, okay. So we can just tell it to move to there. So this is just screep.room.controller. So we want to move to screep.room.controller. And then after we've done that, we want to, actually let me just check this in. So that should make, yeah, that makes this guy move over here. And then we need to figure out what this is going to be doing. So I'm going to, why is this guy going so slow? Um, um, sure, whatever. But so I'm going to go to this controller. Let's see. So we want to take this guy, take our upgrader, and upgrader dot upgrade controller, and then just the target using your carried energy. Freezes this thing, requires work and carry, needs to be within 3 squares range of the creep. Sure. Yeah, whatever. So we want to dot upgrade controller. And we want to say it wants to be this one. So this is game dot creeps upgrader one dot room dot controller. So it's like the controller that is in this guy's current room. I think it's guaranteed that there's always only ever one controller in a given room. So this doesn't need to like figure out what it is. So this just dumped some energy into it. I will note that it dumped 1 energy into it, and that's sort of an issue that our code has because it seems that oh, I guess I didn't even change this in here. So I'm just going to copy this code here and use it in our script where we're saying this is our upgrader thing where instead of transferring to the spawn, we're going to upgrade controller and we're going to upgrade it with the target of this Screeps current room controller. So I'm going to check this in, so now it will give stuff to here automatically. Okay, yeah. Sure. I mean, okay. But the interesting thing that happened here is like this still only transferred 1 carry capacity. And so the reason why that is, you can kind of think of it over here, where this guy is an upgrader, so we're definitely going to be in this area. But we say on each tick, if it has free capacity, we're telling it to go harvest. But as soon as it transfers 1 unit of energy to the controller, it now has free energy and wants to go harvest. So I think what we want to do to make sure that this doesn't happen is have it keep track of stuff in memory where if it is in like if it's currently moving, we want it to keep moving, but if it just transfers stuff to the controller, we want it to keep transferring stuff until it's empty. So we are going to think about how to do that sort of logic. So what we want to do is just have a variable that keeps track of this thing. And so the weird thing about Screeps is that in order to have a variable that persists over multiple game ticks, you need to keep track of it in the creep's memory. And so we can just have that come into existence. Where what we're going to do is say if we have an upgrader, what do we want to do? So we want to have a variable that can either say so if it's partially full, we want it to know if it should if it's currently dropping stuff off or currently picking stuff up. So let's figure out how to do that. If we So if the free capacity is greater than 0, that means it has dropped off at least a little bit of stuff. I think we're going to say also and screep dot memory dot status, I guess. If the status is if it's partially full, or if the status is harvesting, we want it to do, as the status is harvest, we want it to do this. So, yeah, if the yeah, so this is I'll do that. I guess I think just in the console I'm going to set this thing right now to harvest. So we're going to take this in the memory and we're going to say status equals harvest. So it's going to start out harvesting when it begins. We probably will need to change that in the script, but for now, let's just say that. So if it has free position, if it has free capacity and we're telling it to harvest, we want it to go here. Else, we want to say if one of these things is true. So if screep.store.get free capacity is if that is greater than 0, that means we are partially full. Wait. If screep.store.get free capacity. So that means if there's, I probably want to say, actually let's do comments that actually make this make sense. So we say, let's block this out. So we say, if we have space, we say, if we're harvesting, keep harvesting. If we're depositing, keep depositing. And then because those are sort of the two, because I'm thinking like we basically have harvest and deposit are the two status effects that we can have. And so or no, I guess we can say yeah, let's just make it explicit. So then so if we're full, which is the opposite of if we have space, we want to say then just our status. So we want to go to deposit, and then also in this is sort of a sort of implicit status equals deposit. And so as in here, if we have space, if we're harvesting, keep harvesting, but then we also want to add, if we become full, go to deposit. And here we kind of also want to do, if we're depositing, keep depositing, but then if we become empty, go to harvest. Is that how I want to do this? This is just so many nested if statements that look so ugly. I'll if we have space. Actually, let's so I'm going to scrap that and draw up another idea for how I want to do things. Where we say, where I'm just going to depend on the status that I'm in. And so we're going to say if harvesting, as this is if status is harvest, we want to say if we're full, go to deposit, else we just do the harvest code that we already have. And then separately we'd say if status is deposit, then we say if empty, yeah, this feels better to me. Go to harvest, and then else deposit. Okay, so let's actually write out this idea in code. So we're going to just ask if we're in harvest, if this thing, so if we're full, so if the free capacity is 0, then we want to just set our status to deposit. Memory.status equals deposit. Let's make sure that we spell it correctly. Have a semicolon there. And then else, we want to do all this stuff. So we want to find a source, go to it, and move and harvest from it. And I suppose, oh dear. Okay, that's back to being in line with things. Sure. Yeah, where I think this is still my issue with this is that it's telling it to do two things, and like it seems to be working, but I don't love it. I think the thing that they did in the tutorial, which I think I'm going to swap to here, is we're going to say if or right, yeah, no, it's inverted when they do this, because they say we're going to try to harvest from this source, but this gives a return message that if this says error not in range, this is saying we're going to harvest from it, but if we can't, we're instead going to move to it. Yeah. Okay. So we have that logic there. Now, we're going to just do else, and we're going to say that since we're setting screep.memory.status, we say that screep.memory.status must be deposit. And so we don't even need to check for it. And then in here, we're going to do a similar check where we say if screep.store.getUsed capacity is 0. So this is if it's empty, then we want to set it to harvest. Screep.memory.status equals harvest. And else we do all this stuff, where I think I'm also going to do this trick up here, where we're going to say if, or try to do this, but if this gives us a not in range error, not in range, then we want to move to it. Okay, so I'm going to check this in. So I hit Control Enter, and it's still doing things. I'm going to look at this guy's memory. Upgrader 1. Oh, uh-oh. Oh no, it's still moving. It's just moving slowly. And creeps in Upgrader 1. Circle. Why does it? I thought that it should have stuff, but I'm not sure why I can't see the memory stuff, but it is clearly working in that what we were trying to make sure that it did was dump all the stuff that it has in the upgrade before it goes back to the spawn, or before it goes back to this thing to harvest. Ooh, I think one of my creeps died. Yeah, because so creeps only have so long to live, so I'm going to have to respawn them. So I'm going to go back to the console and just, let's see, where's the last time I told it to spawn something? Yeah, so we're going to spawn it, but instead here we're going to make it spawn harvester 1 and give it harvester, that's spelled correctly. So give it that role, and 0 saying, okay, you spawned correctly. We're going to check in on this upgrader creep and make sure that it, when it's empty, it goes back. So yeah, now it's empty. It's going back to this thing. It seems happy to do so. And this thing has some energy in it, so that's good and all. Okay, I think the last thing I want to do today is sort of pull apart this script, because this script is already getting kind of unruly even without my huge comments. I think I'm actually going to delete this. I'm going to delete these comments because this is just trying to get me to think through some of how I wanted this stuff to work. I think we could do a similar, we could have a similar system of remembering if it's supposed to be harvesting or depositing for the harvesters. But I think that's not necessary because when a harvester goes back to the spawn, it just dumps out all of its energy in one tick. Um, and so you don't really need to worry about that. So I'm just going to leave it be. But what I'm going to do is like, I want to be able to edit. I don't want to do that. I don't want to move ifs around everywhere. I want to be able to edit the logic of the harvester in like somewhere that's separate from the logic of the operator. And this is something that they did in this tutorial, and they have fairly reasonable ways to do it. And they do this in modules. So I'm just going to, I'm going to look over here to make sure um, they have this stuff reasonable. Yeah, so I'm just going to say the role I want to do is role.harvester. Um, okay, and we say um, is this what it does? I need to skim in here as we say, okay, so we need to make this into a object with a thing. Okay, yeah, the syntax for this is a little funky, but we're gonna go through it. So the exports is just going to be role harvester, and then up above here we want to say var role harvester is equal to this object that has a function run that takes in the Screep and does stuff to it. Let me just check to make sure that this, I guess it's good to do reasonable syntax. This is function Screep. And so what I just changed was it would work the same way, but I just, this way has nice highlighting and I want to just maintain true to it. So if a Screep is a harvester, it wants to do these things. So I'm just going to copy this stuff into the role harvester logic. If I tab this, it goes further in, darn. I just want this to be pretty, oh, I can just do that. Okay, cool. So that is our harvester logic. Is there anything here? This logic will break once once the Screeps leave this room, but that doesn't seem like it's going to be happening today, so I don't need to worry about it right this moment. So then to make this work, you need to do stuff like this. So we're going to say require role.harvester. Oh no, I want you to go back to main, and then up here at the very top, we're going to say harvester. Yeah, I'm just going to call it harvester. Then we say if a Screep has the role harvester, we just want to harvester.run on this Screep. And I think that should work. So I'm going to check this in and hope it doesn't break anything. This guy's still moving, so it's probably fine. Then I'm just going to spawn another creep. I think I'm going to spawn another upgrader. Yeah, where we spawn upgrader 2 as the role upgrader. It does all this stuff. Okay. The harbinger still seems to be doing its thing. So that's good. Yeah, I guess I'm also going to I'm going to make harvester 2, where this might give me Okay, this gives me -6, which means it did not succeed, and I think the reason for that, oh, okay, I want, um, is when you click on the spawn here, um, you see that it has 177 energy, and I think it needs 200 for it to succeed at spawning a harvester. Um, so I'm just gonna wait for this guy, because this guy looks like he's um, there. Okay. I let's see. Yeah. But so now this has energy in it. I'm gonna try to spawn something in here again, and it succeeds. Okay, cool. Um, so we've successfully gotten the harvester's code out into something else. So I want to do the same thing with the upgrader's code. So I'm going to do um, roll.upgrader. I'm going to dump this stuff in here, but this wants to be, oh wait, no, this wants to be, um, so let me just look at how I did it for, okay, so you do, up here you do var roll upgrader equals this thing, and we say run function Screep is the logic that you want it to have. The indentation is a little wonky, so I'm going to fix it. Ooh, okay. Right, yeah, yeah. I was just a ways off. Um, this is all nice, and then here I want to say the exports are just roll upgrader. Right. Yep. And then in main, if it's this, we just want to say, all right, we need to copy this stuff, but then say upgrader is require role upgrader, upgrader, um, that's fine. Then here we say upgrader.run, run on this current Screep. We're going to check this in, and hopefully this didn't change anything, but just made our code more well organized. Yeah. Um, so I'm going. I've been going for an hour. Do I want to do more? I kind of do, but I also kind of want to be more prepared and remember what things are happening. Ooh, cool. You see this guy die. See, there's a tombstone for when a creep died because it was old and was living for too long. Um, yeah, it looked like this before it died. This thing's fading away. It decays in. Um, okay, it just lives for 15 ticks, which is cool. I wanted to see if if I'm aiming to do 2 ticks per second, does it? Yeah, it feels faster. Okay, cool. It's probably fine for it to be 1 tick per second because I still don't really know what's happening and what I'm doing. So that's very fun. Okay, but yeah, I'm gonna call that good for this stream. I enjoyed this. I am basically just trying to recreate the tutorial in a way that is more logical because I think the tutorial as it existed was pretty copy and paste code that's more sophisticated than this, and it doesn't really enforce that you understand it. So it's useful for me to just talk through things and figure out why things are done the way they're done, and like the oh right is the especially this the error not in range stuff. Like you need to think through it for a little bit to make sure that it makes sense. Where it's kind of an idiomatic thing that is not that hard to or makes sense when you've been exposed to it for a while, but can be difficult for people to grasp at the beginning. Anyway, is there display options? No, I don't care about any of this. Um, okay, good. Um, okay, I am going to exit. If I go back into here, does it take me back to this? It Okay, so I keep my code, but not my progress, which um, is kind of a cute metaphor in that you keep your knowledge, but when you reload this world, it will be different. Or it will be reset, and the only thing you've gained is knowledge, which I think is cute. Um, anyway, um, yes, I'm gonna do that. Oh no, that's not even what I have. Whatever. We're just gonna leave it on that for the moment. That great. Um, yeah, so I'm just gonna talk through some of my thoughts on this. In that it is the I mean, I still am very, very early in this. There's still a lot of things to explore. There's a whole bunch of building stuff where you need to have creeps take energy to go to buildings and all this sort of stuff. Um, but I quite like the building up the logic and having it be accessible. Um, or maybe it's not super accessible, but it provides you like this stuff that I'm doing is basically just following the template that they gave to us um, in the tutorial, where I feel like I'm just repeating what I've said already. In that, um, I wish the tutorial forced you to think a little bit more, which is why I'm basically replaying the tutorial but narrating my thoughts out um, for this. Um, and yeah, I'll. I'm not sure if I want to do this again. I definitely want to play this more. I'm not sure if it makes sense to do it on this stream, um, but I will consider it. If anyone out there has thoughts on that, feel free to get in touch with me, either on the Twitch channel or I guess there's not actually a great way. As if you private message the coding space on Twitch, um, I'll check those if anyone uh, desires to do that. Yeah, that's what I have this week. This weekend, Trek will be doing some more Photoshoppy things, making sprites for a platformer game is I think what his current plan is. So that should be cool. That's 5 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. If you're interested in that, and if not, I'll be back next week at 7:30. Yeah, great. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you.